Hello and welcome to Navigating the Chapters of Challenge with Tele. Today I have a lovely guest with me today, my friend, my sister, Bola. Bola, say hello to everyone and please introduce yourself.
Hi everyone, thank you Tele, it's lovely to be here.
Yeah.
I'm Bola Ogundeji and I have two jobs.
Okay.
One of them is I work as a director of people and OD at a delivery organization. The other one is I'm also a trained psychosexual and relationship therapy. I have also got a psychotherapeutic training as well as an advanced diploma in couples therapy.
Therapy. Okay, so she's our in-house therapist. But beyond that therapy, there's something else you're not telling us that you do. You've got a ministry as well that you run. You've got so many feathers in your cap. So tell us about the ministry as well.
Right, yes, that's true. So I lead Whispering Hearts, which is a non-denominational, it is a community of women who love the Lord. And we try and position each other on 4 levels. One of them is spiritually, physically, emotionally, mentally, and we have meetings at varied times during the year. I forgot to say I'm a mom as well to a 21 and a 20-year-old.
Yeah, excellent. So that's Bola in a nutshell. She hasn't told us everything, but just in a nutshell. So today, on today's show, we're going to come to your therapeutic side. And we're going to ask you questions basically from that angle. And this podcast is about navigating the chapters of challenge. Every one of us has chapters in our lives or seasons in our lives when we go through challenges. But we found out that a number of Christians and a number of people from our ethnic background don't like to share their challenges. They don't talk about it. They just keep it to themselves. And this is not a healthy thing to do. But why do you think people do this? From your professional point of view, why do you think people do this?
It's a very valid point. It takes me back to my grandma. So I was very close to my grandmother.
Yeah.
And when we were growing up, there was one of the proverbs she always said, which was, do not air your dirty laundry in public, something along those lines, which means not everybody needs to know your business.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's just a default for Black West African people.
Okay.
Definitely from my work therapeutically, I've seen that culturally, supposing, if you think of brown or Asian cultures, there's so many Jewish cultures, African cultures, and not just limited to those, there's others as well. I think there's an element of shame. There's an element of keep your business to yourself. I think people are worried about being judged. And we want to put our best foot forward, don't we? We don't want to be the one that feels, inadequate in whatever way. And of course, if a society is perpetuated by, or a particular section of society, I should say, is fraught with that sense of shame and only your best foot is celebrated, then people want to hide the foot that isn't great. And then if you land it even from a faith or religion perspective, there is also a culture there too, in that there's a notion that if you're serving a good God and you're doing the right thing, then everything in your life must be going well.
You can't have any problems.
You shouldn't. Ideally, it contradicts that theology that, God is good. And therefore, when people are really struggling, we don't want to, we're worried about how God might be perceived. So we don't want to make that obvious. Because, again, being judged, because it might be you've not prayed enough or you've not done what you should have done. And so if you compound all of those angles together, then it just can be really big that people then live with a lot of burdens.
Because I was having a chat with somebody yesterday, and she was a victim of being stabbed 33 times by her husband. And she said something which I found quite strange, because I was asking her about forgiveness, and she said she had to first of all forgive herself. And I'm thinking, but you were the victim. And she felt, there was a lot of shame associated because she felt, or maybe she had done something, and that's why she had to forgive herself. And why do people think like that? What do you think why would she have been thinking about forgiving herself and feeling the shame when she was the victim?
Yeah, it's a very good question. I think trauma. When we. So this is linked to the way we respond to trauma, and
Okay.
you can throw an iPhone, same make, same year, made by Apple, throw them from a third floor,
Yeah.
and two iPhones exactly same configuration. If you drop them from a third floor, you're going to find they will crack in different places.
Okay.
No matter how much you gauge the distance and everything. And that's how we humans are. We respond differently, and the way we respond to trauma is very different.
Yeah.
It's not uncommon for trauma victims to feel responsible in some way. It's all part of that, if you like, that whole makeup. They can bounce from feeling victim one day but feeling like they're responsible the other day. I mean, when I think of, for example, victims of sexual abuse, whilst cognitively they know it's not their fault,
Yeah.
it's not uncommon for them to still think, what did I do to deserve this? Did I put myself in harm's way? Again, it's why children sometimes can feel responsible for their parents' divorce.
Yeah.
They kind of feel, is it because of us? And they don't know anything. They didn't know when their parents were getting together. It's just part of our human response cycle to trauma. And I think that person did the right thing by perhaps just validating themselves and not, just forgiving themselves so they can move on from it.
Yeah. And so how do people know that they should seek help? When should people, what are the signs? What signs would you be going through that makes you say, okay, you know what, I need help? Because a lot of people don't know when they need to ask for help.
Yeah, I think at the moment, one of the things I'm actually encouraging people to do is to not wait until they need help before they get help.
Okay.
So we don't have to need help to get help.
Okay.
So if I could just put that point there. And I think we generally, when I see the kind of clients I get or people I see and talk to, where especially judging from from a cultural background as mine, I think there's a tendency to wait for things to become needful of prevention, of curing something than preventing it.
Okay.
So we're more into the
fire brigade
curative
approach.
Yeah, exactly. We're more into the curative than the preventative.
Okay.
But actually, we should be more promoting prevention so that by the time we get to the time when we need help, we already are undergirded with a bit of support. So I would say as early as possible, because sometimes you don't know what you don't know.
Okay.
So if you by starting to talk to people, starting to think about just taking stock. It's like, what's my life? Why am I here? How did I get here? Looking at your family story, looking at people around you. I think it's helpful to then know when we might need help sooner. So that's one way. The other way is, yes, when there's already a problem, sometimes it can feel overwhelming.
Okay.
To then know what to do, because you get into this firefighting, as you say, fire brigade approach. You're reactive. So I think at that point, if possible, the person should get help, but also other people around them might be able to signpost them or see that
something is not quite right,
and be able to offer that feedback or support or signposting. Okay. But again, as I said, where possible, we want to start doing some of that work earlier. Yeah, and if we find ourselves in that position, depending on the person's orientation or their belief, they can always call for help and say, I don't even know what I need, and speak to trusted friends and family, and then they might be able to help them to kind of determine what help they need.
Okay, so I want to talk about a specific situation which we hear about often, couples when they're going through a difficult time, in their marriages. You find that a lot of, particularly women, they take on all the stuff that's going on, and they internalize it, and they don't speak to anyone. What can you say to people out there just to help them go? If there's anyone going through that kind of phase right now, what should they be doing if they're having trouble in their marriage? Should they be just keeping it to themselves, like we all do? I know it's part of the shame thing. You don't want to let people know that it's not all that rosy. But what should people be doing? What are the kind of steps? Like you said, early intervention. So what are the early steps they can take in that kind of scenario?
I think the first thing is to recognize they're not alone.
Okay.
You know, sometimes people think, oh, it's just me and my problem. This must be the worst thing. For every one problem, there's other people experiencing the same. So knowing that they're not alone, I think that will help reduce that stigma or shame.
Yeah.
But there's also something about women, the way we are socialized.
Mm-hmm.
We're very much socialized to think, you know, we've got to rescue, we've got to solve this problem. We're very nurturing as well, aren't we?
Mm-hmm.
So there's that, oh, I've got to put it together. It's my family. And we take it, we make ourselves personally responsible for the success or the failure of the
marriage,
relationship. Yeah. But there's another aspect where societally, where they think women, as I said, the way we're socialized is like women should be, there's so much on us. There's if you like, what would I call the way women have been marginalized also perpetuates that feeling sometimes where we've been battered, bruised, and if something's not going well, it's your fault. I've heard people say, if your husband is not successful,
it's a woman's fault.
It's down to you. Yeah. Even if you look at it from a faith background perspective, I'm not sure how many times people shame men or make them or don't talk to them because the marriage is broken down. Whereas you might notice that a sister's giving a woman, even from another woman, cold shoulder, because everybody thinks it's their responsibilities. And then we take that, as you say, we internalize it and feel like it's our problem. I think recognizing the woman isn't alone, recognizing that they're only responsible for themselves, not for the marriage, not for the person. It takes two to make a marriage work. I know with all the best will in the world, if the woman isn't, if one party isn't interested, then it's not going to work.
Much you can do.
And forgive themselves. Again, goes back to what your guest was saying yesterday, to go back to forgive themselves and relinquish, you just let go of all those baggages and load and expectation. You know, we have bigger expectations of ourselves than anybody else. So just letting go and just breathe.
Okay.
And just breathe and get help, because you can't do it all by yourself, and just live life and not think that. I often say, if our sense of identity is tied to our marital status, it will always be fragile.
Yeah.
So knowing that whether you're Mrs. or if your sense of identity is tied to that, because it means every time there's a chip or there's a problem,
you think there's something wrong and
everything falls apart. But when you know that you are who you are and you're enough and you're whole and you're more than enough, and you may not be everybody's cup of tea, and yes, you should work for your marriage or relationship, so should the other person, and do your best and leave the rest.
Okay. So you said something about letting it go. Okay, so let's get practical. How do you let it go? Because it's easy to say, let it go, let it go, let it go. And it sounds like this phrase that we all use, it is well, which I don't know what it means, but I use it all the time too. I'm guilty of saying it. But so what exactly, let's be practical. How do you let it go?
I wish I could say you let it go as a destination, but it's not. It's not an occurrence.
Okay.
Letting it go is a process.
Okay.
You even if you let go yesterday, you're going to need to keep letting it go every time. So it's not, I don't want to give the impression that you let go and you don't care and that's it. You've thrown your hands in the air. It's not that at all. It's from a deeper place from within, where you start working towards acceptance. Okay. So letting go is being able to accept.
Accepting the situation? Accepting
of what you're not in control of.
Okay.
I think there's a prayer that people used to, that they're selling they put it on plaques and things about, Lord help, it's a common prayer, Lord help me to accept things I cannot change.
Yeah, I think I've seen that. I've seen that, but I can't remember what.
Yeah.
Is it? I can't remember.
It came to my mind just now. It's part of letting go. It is just knowing that you're not in control. So in grief or bereavement counseling, which a lot of grief or bereavement counselors use, we also use it psychotherapeutically. There's something called the grief cycle, where when something happens to you, you're going through, it kind of tells you the 5-6 steps of grief.
Okay.
The person starts from the shock and denial. How could this happen? You know, everything, you're trying to make sense of it. And then they kind of move around. The cycle means people are bouncing around. It's not just when you lose a loved one, it's when you lose a marriage or a relationship or closeness, whatever it is. And then they move from that kind of shock denial. Then they get to a place where they're depressed and embarrassed and depression sets in, and detachment. And then they might be in that position for a little while, and then at some point they might get to a place where they are wanting to bargain and dialogue and talk to someone about it. That might be the time the person will seek a counselor or a friend, and they'll start see what happened. At some point, I think the fifth stage of that grief cycle is acceptance, where the person's bounced around from all sorts of things. They're now getting to a place where they're actually now no longer in denial, no longer burying their head in the sand, but they're now saying, actually, this is real. This is the reality. We've dialogued, we've bargained, maybe we've got help, we've sought help. It may work, it may not work. And then they get to a place of acceptance, accepting the here and the now, not what they're trying to project to the situation. I've seen that before where, sometimes it's even happened to me before, where you know something's not right, but you go out in public and you're trying to still make it look like, it's still perfect. Okay. But that's not reality, is it?
No, it's not.
And then there comes a time where you go, it is what it is. Whether people see you through that or they ask, or you just settle with it. You're no longer worried about judgment or what people think. You're just accepting. And that is it's something people practice. It could be over many years. Acceptance takes a lifetime for some people. For some people, it takes shorter time. And that's what letting go is.
That's about. Letting go. Okay, so accepting the situation, accepting that you can't, there's not much you can do about it. It is what it is, like you said. Yeah,
you can't manipulate it. You can't blackmail people. You can't cajole them. You can't beg. Some people will beg and cry, and you just get to that point where enough. Okay. And you just stop and just do what you can and leave the rest.
Then you said something you're talking about the cycle of grief, and you mentioned depression. Yeah. And I just wanted to take you back to that. What exactly is depression? Because in today's generation, everything, I'm depressed. Every little thing, I'm depressed. And from our background, it's like depression is from the way we were brought up and our age group is something really heavy. And but with this generation, everything is depression. So it's difficult to understand what really depression is. What exactly is depression? When do you know that somebody's actually depressed? Or are there levels of depression? Can you just shed some light on that?
I think we're in a time where we're really enlightened, and the good thing about this generation that you're referring to is that they're really clued up. Their emotional intelligence is really high.
Higher than us.
There's lots of out there. They have access to information like never before. And that is really great. Yeah. The challenge slightly is that sometimes it may not be the whole truth. Okay. And it dilutes because there's so much of it. You kind of don't know which one is real. But depression is real.
Yes.
There are people who, for reasons where there's a chemical imbalance in their brain, if they are missing some of the feel-good hormones in their brain, maybe they're low in serotonin or some other things, it can cause an imbalance. And as a result, they can experience low mood, lose interest in things that they once enjoyed. And it could be all sorts of things. I have a client who has an underactive thyroid, which then impacts on her hormonal levels. And as a result, she then will suffer from low mood, etc. So it can happen. However, there are times as well when we can feel depressed because of an event or something's happened to us, and as a result, we lose our joy. And it is then extreme sadness that somebody is going through. Experiences. Yeah. It could be loss of a loved one, a relationship, and that can be really, especially if the person can trace what's the cause of this extreme sadness. So it's something they can't easily bounce back from. And in that case, they may need support. It could be talking therapy that will help them process what's happened to them and that they've not been able to process properly. So yes, there is depression, and even from a yes and no our culture, again, it goes back to that. We won't accept when something's wrong with us. But I think there's another dimension. We live in a more individualistic society than you and I grew up in.
Yeah.
So lots of people from our backgrounds, they have big families, you know. I remember growing up on Sunday, people don't tell you they're coming.
No, they just turn up at your door.
3 people driving by. Oh, we just came to say this. And then my mom suddenly starts cooking unexpected entertaining.
My mom was always ready. She had pots of food ready.
This is it. So, and because it's collective society, you whatever is your problem is actually not in the scheme of things. By the time you go to Owambe and do lots of party dancing, you're releasing oxytocin. You're seeing family members. You're releasing when you're dancing. You're releasing all these good feel hormones, which are quite therapeutic. But because we don't realize that's what's happening. They go to church, they're dancing for 4 hours.
Yeah.
That by the time the person finishes, they've done exercise.
That's true.
Then they give them food. They've had party food. All of these things are releasing good feel hormones in the brain.
Wow.
So whilst
we've taken that for granted for years, you know.
Absolutely. Whereas now, and if you're living in the West, the weather is dull.
This time of the year is awful.
You're not seeing your best friend is miles away. You're talking to people online. It feels like they're there, but they're not really there. They don't see you, no eye contact, no mirroring. So there's lots of things that, and the way to get around that is to try and not get isolated. Make sure that we are looking after ourselves. And the self-care, we're being holistic about it. Use technology less. All those things that, you know, they're telling us, don't be on your phone forever, sleep well, eat well, you know, don't sit in the same place. But there is depression, especially if there's been a critical incident in somebody's life that's plunged them into that position, or for whatever reason they've had a sickness, or, you know, during COVID, for example, a lot of people that suffered from long COVID had aftermath of neurological issues, or just even being in that long COVID position put them in a quite depressive state. You
also said something about in some instances you can trace where the sadness is coming from. But what if it's a situation where the person can't really put their finger on where that deep sadness is coming from? What should they be doing? What's the remedy?
They need to be going to see their GP. They need to be going to seek medical help, because I think that is where medically they'll be able to do tests. They'll run tests on them. They will be able to see what's their blood levels. They'll do thyroid. There's so many things. I'm not medically trained, but there's so many things that GP can then look at. In lots of instances, I've had GPs refer people to me to come for counseling or psychotherapy, because the GP is very well aware that although, yes, they might give them medication in the short term as an intervention, they realize that there's other contextual factors, or if you like, some social issues that is affecting the person. So it's being holistic about it, and just saying, okay, is it this, is it that? And then, you know, taking a course of, sometimes it's both. They might get medical help, but also be having psychotherapeutic support.
Okay. So, in your role as a therapist, what's the funniest, let me use that phrase, what's the funniest or most challenging, what did I use, situation that you've come across? Let's put it that way. Give us a funny one and a challenge, and one that's maybe not necessarily funny, but the most challenging that you've had to deal with.
Yeah, I'm thinking, let me think, funniest. There's quite a few funny ones, but I think generally in the psychotherapy, I'm laughing, when you're doing counseling or psychotherapy, is generally not, it's quite serious.
I know it's serious, but I mean, just something that...
Sometimes when the clients... I'm thinking, I try not to also find it funny if the clients are not going to find it funny,
definitely
so that they don't think but they're
not taking it serious enough.
Exactly. But there have been times when I've laughed with the clients, so maybe where they've discovered their own, you know, the absurdity of something that they're trying to do, for example. And I had a client one day who came, and just sat there, like not even sitting straight, just sat there sprawled on the chair because his wife had threatened she was going to leave him if he didn't come to therapy with her.
So he just came.
So he just came and just sat there like he was half laying down, half sitting up. And I asked him, I said, how much do you want to be here? And he was like, I don't. And that made everybody laugh.
Okay.
Yeah, in a way that kind of broke their ice a bit.
Yeah.
But he didn't want to be there. It was very obvious, and he didn't make.
Because laughter again is therapy.
Absolutely,
it's a form of therapy.
Yes, you're right. We'll try and use it as an intervention, especially when the clients are now beginning to they're beginning to see the fun in it. That there's some who are quite serious and won't dare laugh, but there's some that are really funny.
Okay.
And another one where they were in their 50, they were 58 and 60. And the guy wanted to ask me, he wanted to know whether I was qualified to be talking to him and his wife, because he didn't think I was mature enough. So he was like, how old are you?
In terms of age?
Yeah, because they're 58 and 60. They've been married for like 28 years or something like that. So he was, I don't know why he thought,
You look young, that's why.
I hope so. But he wanted to know if I had children, if I was married, if I, can I do this? And it was funny to me because I was thinking, actually, you're here because you need help.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure you should be really asking
those questions.
Yeah. But challenging, it can be quite challenging. The most challenging is when I've seen people online and maybe there's a level of or lack of safety.
Okay.
When they're really in very polarized positions and they're really angry with each other, and they looks like they're going to be blowing, really volatile. That sometimes has been challenging because I'm not with them in the room, and B, they're having sessions in their house and they're going to be also staying there by themselves. So to be able to see whether it's safe or whether things are going to escalate, it can be quite difficult to measure. But I do have a kind of, if you like, escalation point, and to know when that's part of the training where you kind of think of, is this a good thing to pursue, or do you need to start de-escalating? And of course you do risk planning and assessment just to be sure that nothing is going to happen, and test that. And if it's not, if I felt that they weren't safe to do that, then I would be saying, I'm sorry, I don't think we can until you've gone and done individual work and you're able to self-soothe and self-regulate better. Well, that's not been often, but that's definitely one that's challenging. The other one is where both parties have different goals for therapy.
Yeah.
So one person wants to stay in the marriage.
The other doesn't.
The other one doesn't.
That must be really hard.
But that's a dilemma for me. Who am I supposed to be?
Yeah.
So, of course, that can be quite challenging. And then it's just trying to work with them to see, actually, can I get them to want one thing? If no, then it's to say thank you, but there's no mandate to do any work here. Yeah, that can be quite challenging, especially when they're really upset, and because it's not a very nice position to be, but it's also, there's nothing really anyone can do in that position. Goes back to what we were saying earlier on, that if it was a woman or even a man and the other person doesn't want to be in there's nothing you can do. Not even a therapy or therapist can change the situation.
And I think also when you have couples who have different views of what a marriage should be, for instance, I think that kind of situation would be difficult to work through, isn't it? Because if I think marriage should be this way and you think it should be that way, and we've come to see you, the therapist, I mean, how do you resolve that kind of situations? I'm sure that'd be very difficult as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, one of the things when I see couples, one of the things we go through is something called we look at the neuroscience of love and relationship. And because when in the lifetime of a relationship or marriage, there's always different phases and different types of love that is kind of able to be present. So at the beginning, when the couple is still very enchanted with each other. You know, they're really
The lovey-dovey stage.
Exactly. It's very easy to be in eros, which is the where we get the English word erotica from.
Yeah.
Because they're liking to each other. It's like, oh, I can't eat. They feed each other. And then after a while, when the honeymoon
stage is over,
then they get into maybe more philia, which is where the friendship type of love exists, where they're much more now like, okay, see you later. They're no longer waiting up. They're eating their food, and then they can go all through that cycle up to a place where there's a period where they're quite stagnant, where the marriage is stagnant, and those years are marked by maybe illnesses or raising small children. So during those times, not much sex is happening, not much, everybody's rushing, trying to, and then depending on how the couple is, they might get to a place where it's more pragmatic. I'm sure you've seen those relationships where they now have 10 houses together, they have estates, they don't really like each other very much.
They don't even talk to each other.
Exactly. They go on different holiday. One goes to see the children, but it's pragmatic. That's where the pragma type of love then stays. So in going back to what you were saying, it's not uncommon to have one of the couple, one wanting to be in eros, is complaining, oh, there's no intimacy, there's no romance. And the other one's like, what's broken? There's nothing. Nothing good.
Everything is working.
Pragmatic. And
I put food on the table. Exactly. We have everything.
They go to one bed together. They go to party. They go to church. Mommy and everybody from the outside world.
It looks good.
It looks good. Their kids even think they're good, but maybe there's one aspect. So it's not uncommon to have that, and that can be usually that's the time when couples therapists might be needed because they can't align in there. One is still in one place, the other one is in the other place. So it can be quite challenging.
Okay. So, any success stories that you can tell us?
Ooh,
tell us some.
Loads.
Because this is about navigating the chapters of challenge. So, people who may be going through similar situations, maybe in their marriages or relationships, it'd be nice for them to hear that there's hope.
Yeah.
So, any success stories you could tell us? One or two?
Yeah, there's so many. I'm just thinking, so just 2 days ago, a client wrote to me, and I'd worked with her in 2021, and it's nice. It doesn't happen always that clients, because they've paid you, you've done your job, but the person wrote to me, and it was really nice to see her email, and she was thanking me for the work that we did together. She said she's now met somebody, and so she was in an abusive relationship before, and we were able to work together, and she was able to navigate that. And she said she's now in a new relationship and it's all going well. She's happier and she's all the trauma that she's had to go through, she's now healing from that. And that was really nice. And she said she now has a better sense of who she is rather than before where her esteem was really low. It was all wrapped around
that relationship.
Exactly. Now she knows who she is. She's therefore able to welcome somebody else into our life in a more healthy way. So that's one. There have been couples I've seen as well who were the brink. I saw a couple maybe up to for 52 weeks.
52 weeks?
Yes. 52 weeks. They were going to...
So they were coming to you every week?
Yes. I saw them for over a year.
They were committed.
Well, because
I don't know many people who do that. 52 weeks is a long time.
It is. It was over a year because if you add in holidays and, when they were on holiday and when we were on holiday. I had them for about a year and 3 months and they would turn up. There were times when I was like, oh my God, please don't say you're finishing. I'm like, they would be one
you were about to give up.
Yes, they were one of my challenging couples and I was like, this is... Plus they didn't live together. Plus they had 2 children. So it was quite difficult, but in the end they were able to get to a point where they worked. She said they were committed, they did the work, they were able to get to a place where they were moving in to again and rebuilding the relationship. So that was a success story, but a lot of hard work, a lot of threats, a lot of we're not doing this. Even sometimes I was like, oh, but they just kept working at it. And that's been successful. What's common to where I've seen couples turn things around is that I've seen that they are seeking help B, they are committed or aligned in their need for help, because sometimes one person doesn't really think they need help. They're aligned in their need for help. They're committed to the relationship, and they're committed to individual growth. I think those will be some of the things I've seen in those that have been able to turn it around. In most cases, lots of clients I've seen have turned it around. In some cases, they haven't, because that's just the best solution for them in their context.
In that context.
Yeah.
Okay. So I just wanted to go to the context of abusive relationships. What are the trigger points, or what are the things that people should be looking out for signs rather, that show them that this is abusive and they need to get out? Because I'm sure you've had people who've come to you who need to get out of those kind of situations, but they're not sure, they don't even know that there's danger. So can you just talk on that a bit?
Yeah, abuse is another, and of course, there's different types of
abuse.
There's spiritual, there's religious abuse,
oh yes,
emotional, verbal, all these types of abuse, sexual abuse. It's and even more insidious types of abuse that are not necessarily common. I think these days people have all sorts of names for different things, gaslighting, this and that. Now that we have vocabulary, it's easy to maybe see some things and know, okay, this is that. But there's some times where people can't really say this is what it is. But I think how people can avoid or navigate abuse, I think it starts from your own personal disposition.
Okay.
Because in some cases, if one doesn't even know what abuse is, or you have the proclivity to invite certain people into your life, you may not even know that by just the way you are not getting help, maybe there's a trauma or problem in the person's life that they've not solved. It's very easy to attract certain types of people, and then that just perpetuates the abuse
cycle.
Exactly. So, one example is somebody may have grown up in a family where there's a lot of abuse, and they've experienced that as a child. They've seen that growing up. How are they to know what abuse is? For them, that's normal, isn't it?
Yeah.
So that's what I mean by going back and understanding one's normal and looking at it against the other types of normal around. Because somebody might think, that's not abuse, that's just how we speak. And then it's only when they are married, they start doing the same thing to other people, and the person's like, don't do that to me. And then they're like, but my mom
What's
and
wrong
dad.
with that? Yeah.
Exactly. So it's quite sometimes deep-rooted. But anything that anyone does that has the tendency to harm or to devalue, it's very nuanced as well, because it's not just like this or that. What's abusive
to one person might not be to the other.
Exactly. Some people, take African communities, for example. Somebody might say, oh, your husband is shouting at you. That's all right. He doesn't beat you after all.
Yeah. And he still puts food on the table. So what's the problem?
And he takes you on holiday.
Yeah. It's just bought you a new car.
Exactly. Whereas somebody else might say, shut up. And they go, oh my God. Oh my God. So that's why I wanted to be just careful that it's, again, the interpreter. But there are some abuse that we're really clear about. Somebody, domestic abuse, hitting, smacking, sexual abuse, violating somebody, rape. Those are there's no blue, gray or white there. They're very shouting at somebody, denigrating them, devaluing them, calling them names, isolating them, stonewalling, criticism. There's so many things that if someone's constantly criticizing you, constantly stonewalling you, you have a quarrel and then they just don't talk to you for 3 weeks or 4 weeks, that's likely to be abuse. The thing is, abuse doesn't just start in one day.
Yeah.
It's small things can happen gradually and they can become abuse.
Yeah.
So even little
it builds up.
Exactly. Even little things like, so you see that your partner's been cleaning all day and then you just leave your shoes in muddy shoes in the place where they've been cleaning, and you don't think, and then you keep doing that, and they say, oh, can you please move your shoes? And you're like, oh, but what's wrong with your hand? Why can't you just do it? Even little things like that. But if by the time you start growing, it might end up into an abusive cycle. So it's having boundaries.
Yeah.
I always say to my clients, when you have for those who've had children before, if you've had kids in the house, toddlers, you put a gate to prevent that toddler from, falling down the stairs. Yeah. It's to kind of barricade. Not because you hate the child, it's because you're actually safeguarding them.
Yeah.
In the same way, couples need to safeguard their relationships. And I do say to my clients that you might think overlooking one thing one time, 2 times is love. It's not. You might not actually be safeguarding your relationship. So sometimes saying to someone, I didn't quite like the way you spoke to me earlier on, can we talk about it? It's a good way of safeguarding against abuse.
Because there are people who just don't want to rock the boat.
Yes, yeah.
They don't want to rock the boat, so they're not going to say anything. They're just going to be like, you know what? Okay, I'll let it go. I'll let it go. And they keep letting it go. And then but they don't know it's building up.
Yeah, it's giving that person permission to do more and say, it's fine. I've got, I can tolerate it. My threshold for treating me badly is really high. So carry on.
Keep doing it.
Yeah. And we're all humans, aren't we? Before you know it, you might just not realize that you've become complacent. So it's not in all cases do people want to be abusive. Sometimes they are enabled.
Yeah.
And there's sometimes where it's more overt abuse, of course, like we talked about.
Wow, thank you so much. The time has gone so fast. I can't believe how fast the time has gone. So before we let you go, what are the strategies, just generally, if you're going through a challenge? Just give us some strategies that we can use to cope. Because we all have seasons, like we said, where we have challenges and we want to navigate them in a positive way. So what strategies, can you give us a few strategies that would help?
Yeah, definitely. If I don't talk about therapy, then that would not be congruent. I think seeking professional counseling or therapy is definitely one strategy. Yeah. Because it means that you can very quickly enlist somebody who's qualified, who's trained, and can help you make sense of the situation, whatever's going on. Speaking to, not trying to solve things in isolation, and speaking out. Yeah. It's very important. There's some people who, maybe when they were in a marriage situation where they've said, don't tell anyone about what goes on in your marriage. Stay in your marriage. Sometimes that's not necessarily helpful when there is a crisis. So don't let it stay in your marriage. Of course, don't tell the whole world if you don't want to, but get trusted people who you can speak to. Yeah. And also not letting go of those positive things that will continue to improve our mental health. So things like self-care, things like making sure you're seeing your friends, you're eating well, you're sleeping well, trying to sleep well, even if sleep is an issue, seeking a doctor's advice if sleep is a problem, but also just doing things that kind of give you life rather than because the challenge in itself will be trying to snuff life out of one, but continue to not, isolate one. Definitely.
Exercise?
Oh, absolutely. That's part of self-care, exercising, because that is definitely one way of gaining perspective and just, having those feel-good hormones. They're really good strategies. What else could I suggest? So get help. Pray. Yeah. This is a strategy. If the person is inclined to pray, meditation, they have a way of slowing down, of helping us reduce stress and avoiding toxic people.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
That's a very good one.
Avoiding toxic situations and people. Yeah. Because that definitely is going to be a joy killer. So if there's a situation that constantly drains the person or people, then limiting, in some cases, is not very straightforward. Yeah. For some people if they're living with the person, for example, but trying to create some distance by maybe doing some other things, or if you like, diluting that access a little bit so that they have access to other things and other people that are much more life-giving than
those who suck the life out of them.
I think those would Yeah, and just let go.
Yeah,
That's
we're
the-
back
I
to
would
that,
say
letting
that,
go.
yeah.
So the key word for this show is let go.
Yeah.
Let go.
Let go of what you can't
Yeah, let go and let
control.
God.
Yeah,
Let
and
go
do
and
what
let
you
God.
need to do as well, rather than bury one's head in the sand.
Yes. I think that's very important. Yes. Seek help. Do what you need to do. Let go.
Yeah.
Okay. We're holding on to that.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Bola. If anybody wants to speak to you professionally, they need your help, how do they get to you?
So they can find me if they just put my name online. Put Bola Ogundeji, therapist. It should come up with the different channels where I've got my details registered, and then they can reach me that way.
They can reach you that way.
Yeah, I'm on Psychology Today, and then I'm on the Council of Relationship and Sexual Therapy register. So, but if the easiest way is just put my name and therapy in front of it, it should bring me up.
Okay. And I forgot, I just remembered now that you're also an author. Yeah. You're also an author. You've written 2 books or 3 now? 3 books. Yeah. Are they all on Amazon? Tell us the names of your books.
That's one season. Oh. Yeah, one is a devotional, positioning you and your family for greatness.
Yeah.
The other one, when life doesn't make sense.
See, and that tallies with, that's exactly one of the books that we need to read.
Yeah.
If you're going through a challenge, get that book.
Yeah.
When life doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
Because I've read it.
Yes.
I remember.
It's a 40-day devotional.
40-day devotional. And it's really a very good book.
Thank you.
If you're going through a challenge, that's one of the books I'd like to recommend.
Yes.
When life doesn't make sense. Bola Ogundeji. It's on Amazon.
Yes.
You can get it there.
Yeah.
So thank you so much, Bola. It's been a pleasure having you.
Thank
the time
you,
has gone
Kelly.
so fast, but yeah, and we'll have you back again very
I'd love
soon.
to come back. I'd love to come back.
Thank you so
Kelly.
much.
Good
Thank
to talk
you.
to you.
Thank you. Thank you all for listening to us today. Hope to have you with us again sometime soon. It's been Navigating the Chapters of Challenge with Tele. Hope to see you soon. Thank you and take care.